as you work, your layer order is going to be extremely important in how you compose your trace. So we just zoomed in and out by holding down the Alt key. When I say layer order, we'll go back and we talked about it previously. We'll open up our layers panel on the right hand side of our toolbar. Again, we can go to Windows and Layers also to open it if we need to make it visible. We can make this larger so we can see all of our layers too. Just by going to the bottom, you can double arrow, click and hold, and drag, and you can see all of your layers that you have. So right now we only have our trace layer with sub-layers that have the other shapes we've drawn and used the Pathfinder tool for. Now we also have our image layer. If we drop that one down, we'll see that we have the guides on that layer and the linked file that we placed, our image that we placed. We're going to go ahead and close that though, go to the arrow and click. What we want to look at this point is if we have a dotted line like this drawn, but there's a shape below this that we're ultimately going to make, we need to make sure we have an order to that layering. Some of you may have multiple layers that need to go one on top, several in between, and one at the background. So have a foreground, some in between, and one in the background. And you may need to switch all of these up. So some of these items may end up needing to transfer to other layers. So we're going to create a couple more layers. We're going to create a layer right now. Close this trace one. We can go either down to this little tab here for new layer, or we can go to our drop down menu here in our layers toolbar and click new layer. And we're going to name this something else. We're going to name this, let's see, middle layer. We don't want it to be green for the highlighted selection, since we already have the trace color, the trace layer as that color. We're going to do magenta. Hit OK, and then we'll see that we'll have middle layer here. So we'll go in where we have this line, we'll go ahead and trace this image here using our pen tool. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We're going to use our pen tool as we have before. Go up to the tool in the left corner on your floating toolbar, or click P on your keyboard. We're going to click on the anchor point end of this piece here to start our line. Click another line. Hold, use our handles to move things around. Now you see we have a dotted line because we actually started from that point. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to hit Control Z or Command Z depending on what kind of computer you're on, if you're on a Mac or PC. And I'm actually just going to move this line for the time being, or I can lock it. So we know that this dotted line is on the trace layer. So we're just going to lock our trace layer right now. And let's draw on the middle layer. So the layer we're drawing on is the layer that is actually highlighted. So we're going to click on our middle layer to make that our current layer and our active layer so that we can draw on it. We're going to start this again. We're in our pen tool. We'll go to the anchor point of this line. We'll click. Click again. Click again. You'll see that we have a dotted line still. We don't want that at all. So we need to go over to our stroke. And we need to unclick dash line because we want a solid line. We can continue clicking because we're in the pen tool to lay down our shape, or the outline of our shape. And again, as you move through this whole process, you'll really get faster and faster at it with using the pen tool or moving things around. As you can see, I've made some mistakes myself, but we'll go back in and correct those. Again, if you're at a corner, don't just click anywhere really long below, because what will happen is you'll get a curve off of this. So you just want to click kind of close to that line just once to make it a straight line. Just click and release. And now you're going to click in another area to make your straight line. This is in case you need to curve anything, and also so you get a nice point at the end of that line. Keep clicking here for us. Again, at this corner, we're going to click close to that corner so we don't get a curve there. Now we do want a curve, so we're going to click and hold as we come through with the pen tool to trace our form. And click close to that corner. As you can see, I didn't click close enough to that corner, so there's a weird shape. There's a weird loop there. But we're going to keep going. We've got a straight line here, so we can really click all the way out to the center of this line we're tracing on. And again, we could click all the way up at this point. We can also click close to it so we don't get in the habit of making a curve at that corner. And then click on the anchor point that we started at for this shape. Now we're going to go in and edit these points because they don't look that great. So we're going to use our direct selection tool. We can either click on that tool on the left-hand side of our page, or we can click A on our keyboard, and then we can select an anchor point, and then we can adjust it with the handles. Click another anchor point. We can either move the point or adjust the handles. In this case, I'm just adjusting the handles. Click a handle point there. I'm going to adjust that, but I'm also going to move this anchor point. I'll click and hold and move that. And this will just, as you go along, you'll just get a better eye for if you need to work with a handle or need to work with moving a point. We're going to move this handle here too. Make that a little bit straighter. Click that handle. Straighten that out some. Even move this a little bit. We might even need a point added to this. So I'm going to go to my pen tool to add an anchor point. Or you can click the plus sign. I'm going to go to that. And I'm going to click on my path of my line to add a point. Now I need to go back to my direct selection tool so that I can move that point, right? So then we're going to be in our direct selection tool, click on that point and hold, and then we're going to move that. And we're going to click on another point, adjust that to move that one. Click on a handle to adjust. And just make that a little bit nicer. There we go. So as you can see, as you move through tracing your piece, you're going to have to edit some things down. You'll have to move points so the line doesn't look too wavy. You have to add points so the line doesn't look wavy, or even delete them, as we talked about. It's looking pretty good so far. Now we do have the space down at the bottom that we had an issue with, so I'm going to click and hold and move that anchor point. And then I'm going to use the handle to see if I can do any type of adjustment to that. See if we make a straight path there. And that looks a lot better, but there's still a weird angle there. So I'm actually going to add a point to there. I'm going to bring this to the left some. Go to my add point, anchor point with my pen tool. Come to my path and click on that path. Go back to my direct selection tool, come to that anchor point, click and hold, and drag that. Let's see if that will work that out a bit for me, which it seems to be doing. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay. So maybe move a few more points, but it's looking a lot better. And I think we're good here. So right now, if we open up our Layers tab, we can still see this dotted line. Even though the shape we just drew is on the middle layer, if we click on our dotted line, can't click on it actually because it's locked. So we'll unlock it, and we'll click on our dotted line again. And you'll see all of a sudden it goes to the trace layer. So it tells you it's on the trace layer. But the reason why we can see this dotted line through the shape is because if we click on that shape, you'll see that there's no fill on that shape. So let's put a fill on that shape. We're going to double click the fill box on the left side of the screen. We're going to choose a color. We'll choose blue, somewhere around here. Hit OK, and then our box is filled. Now you see we do not have a dashed line at all. We cannot see that, and that is due to the layer order. So if we go back to the layer tab here and click that, we'll see that the middle layer is actually on top of the trace layer, but our dotted line is on the trace layer, and that's why we can't see it. If we want to see that dotted line, the middle layer needs to be below the layer that the dotted line is on. So we're going to click on our middle layer, click and hold, and drag it right below until we see that it's going to be placed. You'll see a couple double arrows that are below that trace layer show up, and then we're going to release. And now we can see our dotted line above that shape we just drew. So there's going to be some reorganization you're going to need to do to layers. There's going to be some times where you create new layers and put shapes on it. If you haven't actually organized your layers in the beginning as you go to put new objects on or new shapes on, what you can do is you can always create a new layer. So we'll go to the tab down here in the layers panel. We'll do new layer. Again, you can rename it by double clicking it. And we'll just name it as in, we'll do it as in blue shape. That's what we'll name this, okay? So say I didn't have this shape on a layer at all, or say this shape was actually on a different layer, or I want it to go to the blue shape layer. So I have my shape here that's filled in blue, but I don't want it on the middle layer anymore. I still need it below the trace layer, but I want to have it on a different layer because I have some other things on the middle layer that maybe I just don't want it associated with. So we're going to actually go to our regular selection tool. Okay. Our object is actually highlighted as a selection because we had selected it before. If it's not, then click on the line or the path to select the object. And now we'll see that currently, if we click on it, we're under middle layer. So that object is on the middle layer, but I want it on the blue shape layer. So what we can do is we can go to the object that's selected and right click, and we can go to Arrange, and you see there's a Send to Current Layer. However, it's not bold. And the reason why it's not bold is because we don't have a new layer chosen. We're still in the middle layer. So just click anywhere. And again, we're still in the middle layer. We have this selected, but we can change layers and still have that object selected or that shape selected, even if we click on another layer. So we want to click on the layer we want it to move to. We want it to move it to the blue shape layer. Now we're going to go back over to our shape and right click. We'll go to Arrange. We'll go to Send to Current Layer. And if you look in your Layers panel, you'll see that that shape is now on the blue shape layer. So these are ways in which you can arrange the items on your layer or move them in case you need to bring one forward or send one back. And this way you can also move your layers around and then have a more complicated stack of your layers. So remember, if you want to actually move an item to a different layer or a new layer, you have to have that item selected with the regular selection tool, which is the black arrow, or click V on your keyboard. Once you've done that, you have to have the layer you want it to go to selected. So if we want to move this back to the middle layer, we have to select the middle layer. And then we can go over to our object and right-click, hit Arrange, go to Arrange, and then click Send to Current Layer. Okay? So it sent it to the current layer that we had highlighted. So now it's back on the middle layer. So again, this is how you move things around, create new layers, create more complex layering within your composition, because some of you may need this. You may not have just the background and the foreground. There may be other things that come through or show through. And in that case, it could be in relation to the opacity of things. So next we'll look at opacity, but for now try playing with the layer orders and rearranging objects from one layer to another.